We'll have today the two sessions. First one is a training sessions, and the second one is a thematic presentation. The training sessions will introduce you that what kind of the action points you could make to make the SDG goals to realize in your project. It's not only the limited to the NIAIDS project itself. So I think it could be, you could apply this the actions to your project as well. Session 2, regarding the SDG point of view, we will have 3 presentations from the 4 excellent presenters. Then we will make a panel discussions and a wrap up. Just before we just jump into the first presentation, just in case that you never heard about NIAIDS, I'll just give you the keyword, what NIAIDS project is doing. And this NIAIDS project is just basically, if I just make it one single sentence, it's a smart water management for sustainable development goals. So this is our global objective, and it's not only the NIAIDS, we have the same goals with the 5 other Digital Water 2020 project. That in the second part of the sessions, we have this collaborate. We have speakers from this collaborate project. NIAIDS has 3 cities that we are implementing our solutions. One in Alicante in Spain, and one in Garus in Switzerland, and one in Braila in Romania. So we have a different requirements on the managing the water resource, and then applying our solution there. But today, not about the technical solutions, we will particularly focusing on the SDG. I guess that everybody knows about the SDG, but just in case that the SDG is the just global goals, that the collection of the 17 areas, that's for the set by the UN in 2015. That's for the blueprint to achieve the better and more sustainable future for all. And you see this, there is a link that if you go there, that you can find much more information. And then today we're focusing on the water sectors, that you will hear about the action points, and also the interesting information on there. But this is not only through the UN. European Commission is fully committed to achieve, to go on the SDG goal achievement, and then they build the European Green Deal goal. That's the no net emissions of the greenhouse gas by 2050, and then each of these 17 goals, and then there's a setting of the actions points, what European countries could go on. So this is the much more, and then this to make the society to fair and inclusive for all. So there is another the link here, so that you can find the more information. I believe our presenters will deliver this message more clearly to you. So we will start the first presentation. So I will give the presentation to the João. I will shortly introduce about him. That the Dr. João Costa is a senior researcher at the Institute Stefan, and he is also collaborating with the UNESCO AI Research Institute, IRCIA, and he's also a lecturer on AI-related topics at the Barcelona Business School, and he was also head of marketing at bioinformatics scaling up Genius. Please welcome the João. I will give the presentation to. Wait a sec.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just give the floor to the João. Now the floor is yours, João.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Today I'm going to talk to you about observing the SDG 6 So the water observatory that I present to you today was developed throughout the past 2 years in the context of the EC-funded project NAIADES that was just mentioned, and is hosting the seminar. It is a system. It's a web-based system with 4 views where the user can interact with data that is coming in real time or near real time, and is being obtained from the exploration of indicators data, media from news and social media, published research, and the observation of natural resources. And now we're going to go through them a bit right now. It is putting together a big diversity of open data at a global and local granularity, getting ingested into the system with different frequency and powered by the most recent text mining, machine learning, and data visualization algorithms and methods that the Joseph Stephan Institute and IRCAI are experts on. Today we will talk about the Water Observatory under an SDG 6 perspective, given the thematic of the webinar and the interest of the audience, showing the great value that the functionalities of the Water Observatory can bring for its users for evidence-based decision making. So let's go. And therefore, we start our guided tour at the indicators view, where we can see an animation of the progress of countries in selected SDG 6 areas. We can select that data that actually that changes what is being observed, and some of which is directly coming from the SDG 6 data portal, so the SDG that is directly related with water. For example, water use efficiency, safely managed drinking water, and others are provided from reliable data sources, as are the UN data portal, the World Bank, the Eurostat, and other data providers. To have a closer view over the progress within a certain country, and hook the interest of bigger identification to the showcased results, we can dive into the regional granularity that can compare, for example, water supplied, acquired, or used, comparing the regions. We have, and we can also see that each of those indicators in detail, so that we are able to analyze them and compare the specificities that we're looking at. We have worked with water resource management institutions and local authorities at the NAIADES use cases in Alicante, Caruz, and Braila to identify relevant data sets to clean and ingest into the system. To ensure the quality of the information obtained, we need to understand with the decision makers what indicators matter in the light of the priorities reached. This change of priorities and geolocation of some of the data sourced are what we need to configure the observatory to a new user that brings these local priorities to be observed. Then we have in the media view a news stream that is filtered according to those priorities, analyzing water events. In these, we can see the news in the world or the news in certain locations, and to be able to monitor events that are related with a certain SDG, with a certain topic, and with details of that topic. So the configuration can be really specific, and it's not dependent on the language. So we are ingesting more than 300,000 news articles per day, over 60 languages. So we are able to identify events that are happening in rare cases, and for example, use them to understand best practices. We're also having Twitter dashboards where we can explore the stream from Twitter, what people are talking about over certain topics that again are filtered according to the interests of the NIADES user, of the observatory user, and for example can identify what are the sentiments about certain topics and other aspects that relate with it. We can then have an efficient review on topics in this news and tweets over exploring the data, so the tweets and the news on a certain range over a certain topic, and above automated generated topics. We are adding also intensity of sentiment based on tweet counts to understand and to link these data sources as much as possible. Now, on the research view, and because it's important to look into the knowledge that is globally obtained over overall topics, not only on water topics. Water topics are those that we are monitoring closer. For example, the water trends that can be obtained on the Microsoft Academic Graph that's collecting more than 136 million articles. But we can also look into the technologies that relate with certain water topics and so on. We can explore those in a similar system that you just saw, so that when you're changing, you can change the times of the search, because sometimes it's important to go in a certain to select a certain time window for this search. You can search also patterns. This is very interesting, and we're going to see this in a minute, so that we're able to have a clear understanding about the knowledge generated and the technology that is out there to help in this problem. Another view, and the fourth view is a little bit different. Is geolocated. So we are actually ingesting the weather data in three terms: rainfall, humidity, and temperature, and the water levels in rivers and lakes. And what we are doing is we are trying to provide the user with exploratory tools and a more clear visualization of the impact of climate change, based on one hand understanding and forecasting for example 10 years ahead, how the seasons are going to change, how things are going to develop based on 20 years of historical data. Actually, we are looking at the data from Carouge in Switzerland, and to understand, for example, how resources are reacting in a local circumstances. So not on an average world area, not in the whole Switzerland, for example, but what happens locally, how and of course help the preparedness of water sector stakeholders on this aspect. On your right, and to understand, for example, how will winter look like in 10 years from now? How summer will subdivide in different areas according to the water topics that we are and relating to. Also, we are providing other exploration tools. So very much based on how can we better visualize data to have better decisions and more informed decisions. To, for example, explore how the relations between these areas and the states can inform us how I don't know, spring will have different sub-seasons inside, and how can we relate to that? All this based on historical data, on data that we have been observing the past 20 years, and the progress that we are observing, of course. And finally, we are trying to understand how the causality relation between resource indicators and how different indicators can, or the combination of indicators can influence others, and what can we learn from that. So one of the first, so we want to put things together to not look only individually in this data, in these views, in these data sources, but actually taking partial answers for one question, and explore in full the water observatory that NIADES brings you. And in that way, for example, one of the examples is to look into best practices. Best practices. We have a problem. It's a water contamination. It's a water event like a flood or drought, and so we want to we know eventually from the news, but also from our own what the specifics of these events, but we want to know how others have taken care of this event, what methods have they used, what technology have they used, and so we are putting in front of the water sector stakeholders the capabilities to have a very overall, very global understanding of how these events are taken over from the news, from the exploration of the news in the context of certain of those priorities, or from the indicators and trends and so on. And these local indicators, of course, will complement the information with this regional granularity. Always thinking in the sense of going from a global view, a global observation, to the local priorities that define the interests of the user, and further the exploration of news and data visualization models. Now let's see if my video will work. So, for example, in the case of floods, we start by looking into the indicators in certain aspects of the water, in this case in Alicante. We search using the word flood from the Wikipedia, so that we actually can access all these different languages and the news of these different languages, looking to top concepts. So we are here in the specific board for exploration of news, looking to the sentiments around those news, how that can in fact see how and the categories that relate with it, with the topic of floods. In fact, based on this, we are able to understand, for example, let's see, we are able to understand what are the news in the world based on that. That we can better use. What is the sentiment, for example, of how the water sector is actually dealing with those floods, and so on. And the categories from the news selected, what and then we are able to look into the research and understand from the point of view of the research where could be lessons learned that we could profit of going using the queries and looking into those news, actually understanding and moving on these targets through this automatically generated topics in the sample of articles that we provide, and what can we access. But of course, we can then also look into patents and understand what technologies can be related with certain subtopics of things that we learn. Okay, this is one of the cases that we would like to highlight. And the second case is water contamination. Let me see if we're going in the right direction. So we can use we can understand the progress of second. Here we go. We can look into we can define the water contamination filters based on the specific contaminations that we want, and actually follow specific countries, for example, using the Wikipedia topics and using text mining. We can also go and use a specific concepts, biomedical concepts, for example, chloroform. That is one of the contaminators, and understand on that perspective how it relates, for example, with drinking water, on what news we can reach out based on that. Okay, so best practices. Now, another case that is of interest, that's a little bit different, is to understand what's going on right now. So using Twitter, triggered, for example, by the weather conditions, and understand how people can what people are talking about the weather. This is one area that's already available, but it's also an investigation, in further investigation. How can we learn from the news based on the older events, and what data was collected on tweets to use this, and understand how can we be informed about the intensity of the event, and causal relations between these events that are triggered, and that we can get alerts from, and that we can try to understand better what relations other indicators can bring. And finally, understanding the climate change is something that is obviously very much in line with the European Green Deal, and with the SDG 6. Just today in the Euronews, we're again talking about the problem of water efficiency in Europe, and we based on the data visualization models that we were presenting, but also on the indicators and local indicators, the progress that we're doing locally, how regions are adapting and aligning to this, and utilizing this complex data stream visualization to better understand the relation between the resources and anomalies, using granular causality to relate the new indicators generated, and try to have fundamental answers to this. More than research, more than water sector, we can, of course, bring these technologies into education. The need for water sustainability awareness can help in the general, for the general public, and can use this these tools that can be available, are modular enough to actually embed in certain web-based places, and inform the public on, at the local level, at the global level, how we are aligning with the SDG 6 and how we are aligning with these priorities that are local to us. Priorities in Switzerland and in Portugal and in Spain and in Slovenia are eventually different, and people react differently to these priorities. These resource tools can also be used in the classroom, and in fact we've been discussing this very recently, how we can go forward to the water use efficiency already at the level of the classroom, and the water resource utilities customers being served with this information can also be educated for a better water use in relation with local authorities and water sector stakeholders. This work will continue in the direction of other SDGs. Right now, the work that we did in the NIAIDs showed very impactful results and great usability in the water sector. We are engaging this system into the wider scope of the SDG 6, but also then in the context of the further work from the IRCAI that will be coordinating, we'll go towards new SDGs and observing new SDGs, either from a local or a global perspective, towards understanding better alignments and alignments with this with data ingest. Thank you. So I guess I'll be passing the word now to the.
Thank you, Yao. Thank you for this excellent presentation. I think this is very interesting. That you could see this local information with the long-term forecast data, and it gives a quite good visualization of the data. So it's really perfect for the training session that the general publics or local authorities can use. I think it's wonderful. I do not see that any questions on the chat box. We have a separate panel discussion sessions, roughly from 12, I think, so that everybody just think that if you have questions, how you could apply this on your project or your local education, please think of your questions, and then we will open the questions in the panel discussion. Thank you very much again. And then now we will invite the Miss Anna Brekin. Wait a sec, I will give her the. Okay, that now Anna Brekin is a project manager and the researcher at Mandat International in Switzerland. She is a special expert in environmental science and sustainable development goals, particularly in the context of smart water management and smart cities. In the NIAIDs project, she carries out the research on environmental impact assessment, policy, and SDGs, and while also managing the outreach activities. Please welcome Anna Brekin, and then now Anna, the floor is yours. We will hear about this IM for SDG methodologies from her.
Thank you so much for this introduction, and thank you for having me in this session. I would like to make this presentation, well, a second training session on this methodology that we're developing currently in the course of the NIAIDs project. So my presentation will be structured as follows. I'll give a brief introduction to the SDGs to really set the general framework, focus on the methodology, and explain the 6 steps that we are using to apply it. So I will not go into the entire details of the SDG because already Una did this in the introduction, but as a reminder, the SDGs were developed under the Agenda 2030 by the United Nations, and they aim to achieve these goals by 2030. So they include a vast objectives, and they consider a very large number of topics, going from environmental, but also social and economic issues. So each of the SDGs has different targets and different indicators to measure the progress made within each of these objectives. So what the IAM for SDG methodology is trying to do is testing if a project, any project actually, is aligned with the SDGs and is contributing to the SDGs. So it's an impact assessment. This is why you have IAM in the name of the methodology. And it aims at providing a user-friendly and easy implementable methodology and tool to align any project, including research projects, pilots, public infrastructure, and private investments with the 17 SDGs. To do so, the IAM for SDG methodology follows a dual approach, which first tries to identify and mitigate potential risks and the negative impact of any project in respect to the 17 SDGs, and also identifying and leveraging potential of the project to maximize its positive impact. So we're not only focused on the negative side, but also trying to look for any opportunities on how to support the SDGs. So why should you use the IAM for SDG methodology? Well, its benefits are very similar to an environmental impact assessment. However, it has two additional advantages. First, it not only focuses on the environmental impact and aspect of a project, but it really focuses on the whole set of the SDGs, including the social and economic ones I previously mentioned. But it also identifies and considers the positive potential and the negative impacts of a project. Who can apply it? Well, all actors can apply it who are planning to launch or to get involved in a new project. So of course, this concerns researchers, policymakers. We can also think of project evaluators to really see if this project is SDG compliant or not, project managers, business managers. Really, the range is quite large. And how do you start? Well, there are two things to do first. First, you really clearly need to determine the scope of the project, without which, of course, you will not know whether or not you're compliant with the SDGs and what exactly your project will entail. And second, you need to appoint a Sustainable Development Officer or an SDG officer who will be responsible for leading the whole IAM for SDG process. So how is this methodology implemented? It follows 6 steps. It goes from the identification of risks and opportunities to later qualifying those, determining priority levels, identifying actions, formalizing the action plan, and monitoring and reporting on the achievements. So I will go now step by step and explain how each of these steps works. So step number 1 is about identifying the risks and opportunities within your project. At the very bottom of the screen, you can see there's a definition of risks and opportunities and what exactly do they mean in our context. So risks are actual and potential negative impacts the project could have on the SDGs, whereas opportunities are actual and potential positive impacts that the project could have on the SDGs. So in step 1, we need to identify all potential risks or opportunities within the project. And later, we also need to systematically analyze how the activities of the project can influence the SDGs. So to do so, we need to really consider the objectives and the targets of each of the SDGs. And of course, this goes hand in hand in doing a little bit extra research to understand what each SDG is about. And second of all, it's also about identifying all risks and opportunities related to those SDGs. So in a practical term, this presents itself in the following first table that partners are invited to fill in. As you can see, we have special cells for the SDGs, in which also, partners are expected to identify any risk or any opportunity related to said SDG. These two cells that you can see right now on the screen. In step number 2, we are qualifying the risks and opportunities. And to do so, we're determining the importance of the 4 identified risks and opportunities. So to do so, the methodology has developed 3 parameters: likelihood, impact, and effort required. First one, for risks, is the likelihood, which considers the chance of unidentified risk to occur. Then, impact is a parameter both for risks and opportunity, and this one defines a positive or a negative effect that a project may have on a given SDG. And the last parameter only is applicable to opportunities and is related to the effort required and defines any effort or financial resources needed to implement an identified opportunity. So what are you going to do with these parameters? Well, you need to qualify for each of the risks and opportunities. For this, we're using a 3-level scale going from small, medium to large. And for example, if you think that an impact is small, then you assess it as small. And you go back basically to the following table, and you grade it according to the scheme. So for example, a negative impact that is small is going to have a small negative impact on the SDGs. However, a opportunity that is large means that it has a large positive impact on the SDGs. Going back to these tables, it actually means that we need to focus on the new cells, which are identified over here, and partners are basically expected to put a cross in the relevant cell to assess whether the impact or likelihood for the risk and for the opportunity are large, or medium, or small. So this is an example that we can directly take as a case study where partners were also requested to identify any impact or likelihood of their activities. And you can see that, for example, in terms of this partner specifically, they didn't identify any risks related to SDG 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, they did identify some opportunities that they could leverage on in their activities. And this is why they filled in these cells on the right, assessing their impact, the effort required. And in an opposite manner, it was also discovered that there are some risks, for example, related to gender equality in the activities that have been assessed as of medium impact and of small likelihood, and that maybe some actions can be later on proposed to leverage these. So in step number 3, after having done these first steps, we are now determining the priority levels. And you will be able to determine this using the matrix here that is proposed on the screen. For the risks, the priority level is defined as shown on the matrix. For example, if the impact is large and the likelihood is large, then the priority is going to be high because it's very likely to happen. and there's going to be a large negative impact. So it's very important to actually do something about this for the project to act on a very negative risk. However, there's this very similar logic for the opportunities, but the logic is a little bit inverse. So for example, if the impact is large, but the effort required is very small, then the project should definitely focus this, because this means that maybe there's very little resources to be invested in this. Maybe it just requires a little bit of a change in the activities, and it's going to deliver a high positive impact on the SDGs. So to do so, the second step includes formalizing this in the following table, and basically, once again, including in the table which SDG we are relating to, and compiling the results of the matrices in this following table. Step number 4 concerns the identification of the actions. And here, what are we going to do basically with the risks and the opportunities that we have identified? Well, in terms of risks, we have proposed a number of actions that can be taken. Of course, this list is not exhaustive, and partners can decide whether or not they want to apply them. However, they give a base of inspiration. So for example, for risks, you can eliminate it, prevent, control, transfer, accept, or monitor. You have the definition over here for each of those mitigation options. And similarly, if you have opportunities, you have another range of possibilities that are offered to you. You can exploit these opportunities, you can share it with someone else, you can enhance it, or you can completely ignore it if you feel like this is not going to be very profitable to you. So from a visual perspective, we have decided to also present it using the following matrix, giving some possible risk mitigation measures and also opportunities implementation strategies, where depending on the likelihood and the level of negative impact, or on the level of efforts required and the level of positive impact, partners can decide on the type of action that they can use to act on each of their risk opportunities they have identified. And so clearly here, this relates to this new cell, which is identified action, where partners can decide which of the actions they're going to basically implement, and or propose something else that can basically suit their priorities and objectives. So step number 5 consists in formalizing the action plan. And here, the user, or the SDO, Sustainable Development Officer, is going to be defining the action plan, setting specific deadlines, and adding any type of relevant remarks. And again, this is related to the following cells in the table. So here we decide on the leader, who is going to take leadership on the following action, by when, and providing any type of necessary remarks in case there are any. So as an example, another partner has basically submitted the following, and you can see basically that there's quite a lot of reflection that happens at the level of a project on when and how, what's the status also of the action in respect to a following SDG. And finally, step number 6 is basically a continuous task. It really is about monitoring and reporting on the results of this methodology and on the implementation of the action plan. So here the SDO is continuously reviewing, seeing maybe if there's something else that has happened in the middle of the project that needs to be reassessed. And of course, proposing any sort of updates to formalize maybe new suggestions or identify new risks that may have happened. So this is the methodology in a nutshell. Of course, We are still right now in the phase of testing it with the pilots and at the project level. But the idea is to really be able to apply this methodology to any sort of project, not only to NIAID's project, but also to really not only water-related projects that you can see, but could be in any sort of industry. And the idea is really to focus on the entire set of SDGs. What we have noted in the use of this methodology is that it forces the user to think outside of the box and not just think in terms of the direct risks, opportunities that they may identify, but really think of, oh, maybe this my activity has some sort of impact on agriculture. Maybe it has an impact on gender balance. Maybe it has an impact on education. Some activities that at the beginning may not look like they are connected to the SDGs, end up actually having more connection that we may imagine. And if we can leverage these actions and take some steps in the direction of the SDGs, then we are definitely contributing to the SDGs and of course to the European Green Deal as well. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you enjoy this presentation.
Thank you, Anna. I think it's excellent that I think this is the case that it's not only limited to the water sector, but all the widened industries. I think we could try to this impact assessment methodologies. Currently, after this political declaration of this SDG and then Green Deal, the most important thing is the action itself, and then I think this is the perfect case that we could apply ourselves. While I'm hearing the Anna's presentation, I thought it would be great to have some sort of the second sessions that later we invite the people and then really just to follow this methodology and then fill the tables and then see where we are. And I think that kind of practical session could be great to follow. But anyway, just it's a very good first steps to understand the methodologies. I still do not see any questions yet. I think everybody is waiting for our panel session. So that we'll move on to our second session of that we invite from our collaborative projects, that we invite the 4 experts, and this will be a great opportunity to learn their knowledges and insight from their expertise. Our first presenter could be the Dr. Frank Legal. I gave him the that he will present the managing SDG KPI through standardized data models and platforms. Dr. Frank Legal is a CEO at EGM, an innovative SME focused on integration and validation of emerging technologies. He is a co-chairman of the ISG CIM working group on NGSILD, and he also he's also chairing the interface working group of the 5-year technical steering committees, and also as well as the joint EDGE 5-year foundation working group on digital twins. He's also a co-chair of the intelligent smart systems working group of the ICT for Water European Research Cluster. It is great to have him in this webinar. Frank, the floor is yours now.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for inviting me in this webinar. Thank you for the introduction. So as you said, I'm Frank Legal from EGM. And here I'm going to present some work which has been done in the context of the 5-year for water project. I noticed we have several partners from the project also listening, so I hope I won't say too many wrong things. In a nutshell, what is Fireware for Water about? It's a project which gathered 14 partners from Europe, which is led by the International Office for Water, and which started more than 2 years ago, and which will end middle of next year, and which is looking at different domains. Providing smart application for raw water, for raw water supply, for drinking water supply, for water treatment, and also looking closely at the Q segment. So we have, for that, 4 demo cases. I will come back to that later, plus some demo networks which are going to replicate or to reuse what is being done in the project. Technically, what has been the concept we pushed in that project is to create a link between the water sector and Fireware. So you may know about Fireware, which is an open and license-free community which emerged from past quite old European projects, which turned out to be a EU-wide foundation with a network of more than 300, I think, technology partners, users, adopters in the community. So it's quite a living community. And the idea in the project is to really build on this platform and to show the potential of interoperable and standardized interfaces for water management system. And in the project, so we have added few technical work packages and others which are really looking at the end users, the cities, but the water utilities, the water authorities, the citizens, the consumers. So we are really looking at the different dimensions we have for the water management system. And providing solutions. So we have the private utilities. They come with their own solutions, and there is all legacy systems which are being integrated as well. And obviously there are some SMEs in the consortium and around the ecosystem, plus developers, including from academia. And I will come later to the concreteness of what we propose. Today, so we're asked to present what we do in respect with SDGs. And there is clearly one SDG that we are focusing on in the project, which is the SDG number 6, which is about ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So that's clearly the main focus. Obviously, other SDGs apply, but that's clearly the one we have in mind in the project. Probably you know about this one, but it's really about targeting 2030 as a target to solve or to progress on a number of issues related to water availability, safe drinking water, with issues which came even worse with the with the COVID situation, because you are asked to wash hands, but for that you need clean water. If we look a bit deeper into this SDG, I hope it's still readable. It's declined into subcategories, which are numbered 6.1 to 6.6, plus 2 A and B, which are more, let's say, transversal. And each of these blocks has some high-level indicators which are associated to it. So 6.1, for example, which is about universal and equitable access to water. 6.2, which is about sanitation and hygiene for all, including obviously all populations, which are quite specific, including gender issues and so on. The 6.3, which is about improving water quality and reducing pollution in the water. 6.4, which is how we use efficiently the water and ensure that when we go for water withdrawal, we do it in a sustainable way. 6.5, which is about implementing integrated water resource management systems. 6.6, which is more about protecting and restoring the water-related ecosystem at large. It covers everything related to water ecosystem. And then we have two more transversal subtopics, which is 6.A on international cooperation and capacity building, supporting mostly developing countries, and 6B, which is about participation of local communities in the achievement of this SDG. And it's always difficult in the project to say, okay, what is going to be our focus in the project? But at least I think there are these 5 SDGs or sub-thematics that I think where we are quite strong. And I will present what we are doing in these 5 topics in the Firefox project. Maybe to start with, the first one, which is the organization of local water forums. So we organized local water forums. So it's not Firefox Water alone, and it wasn't with some other projects and starting from some legacy as well. But using experience developed in Great Torrington, which is one of the place where we have a use case deployed. Then we replicated it in other cities, as Sens, Amsterdam, and now Cannes and Timisoara are joining as well. And we developed local water forum. And what we call a water forum, for that we build on the contemporary helix concept, where we gather people from different areas. So obviously we have the standard 111, let's say the academia, the industry, and the government. But also now it's about also including the civil society and taking environment at large into considerations. So this local water forum started to have meeting, produce some actions, and there were a workshop where members plus counterparts in Africa and South America discussed together to improve their working procedures and so on. And one of them is about providing citizen engagement mechanism, and I will present a bit what we did in the context of Great Torrington. And it's not only at local project level, but there are also more wider collaboration for policy definitions with the United Nations, with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, the World Bank, and so on. So this is a hot topic right now in the project, and reports on this will be issued the beginning of next year. So I would encourage you to go and check what will be published by the project. Now on the other topic we are working on, so we have these 4 demo cases in the project. So first one, which is on the raw water supply optimization in the region of Assens. So it's 5 million inhabitants there, and there are 500 kilometers of aqueducts with 4 main reservoirs that they are connecting. And it's all rely on a network of sensors about quantity and quality of water along the network. And obviously, they have to manage to do the actuations, to manage all the levels, to ensure that there is continuous delivery of water, to avoid any risk related to water, and still maintaining, obviously, the relevant water quality level. And for that, there are the issue of getting data from different vendors, and there is the need to convey all the information into one common system, and provide at the end a common interface for the users. So for that, they've been using the Fireware for Water platform, using open data models, open interfaces, and being able to connect everything from the top of the mountain down to Assens. The second demo case is taking place in France, in south of France, and it's focused on the water distribution, drinking water distribution. one particular aspect in Cannes, it's a touristic country, and there is about 180,000 inhabitants in winter, and it goes up to 500,000 during the peak seasons. And obviously, it's not raining that much in the summertime, and the water withdrawal, the water provisioning has to be managed all year long to ensure that during the summer they will be able to satisfy the demand. And for that, it means that there is a need to improve all monitoring aspects and providing medium-term, long-term forecast of water demand and water availability. And obviously, as well, it's questions of reducing and detect potential loss of water which happen in such networks, and they reduce all leakages, all possible leakages. So there in the project, it's again the same, connecting different data, heterogeneous data streams, legacy systems, because it's already quite well connected. We have a big utility, Suez, which is managing this. So connecting all these systems also with the fire ecosystem, and adding some new innovative sensors to the system to go a bit further with low-cost sensors to connect or to improve knowledge about water quality. The third one, which is taking place in Amsterdam, and it's handled by Waternet. It's about this plant has a capacity of about 1 million inhabitants, and it's serving the whole city of Amsterdam, which has a long history of collaboration with the fireware ecosystem. And there, the challenge is really to reduce all the emission of nitrous oxide and manage or reduce the energy demand of the whole plant. So it's not only about water management, but it's also about global optimization of the plants. And there again, they are connecting the plants to the Fireware for Water platform and developing deploying new algorithms on top of the platform to improve this overall management. So it's not only about getting data from the sensors, merging data from heterogeneous data stream, but it's also about deploying new algorithms. And the fourth demo case that we have is based in the UK. So that's the one in Whittington I was mentioning. So that's an area which has a bit more than 3,000 properties with schools and so on and so on. Sorry. And they identified that there are a large number of vulnerable customers, and there are no really measure of what were being consumed, what was happening, and for these customers, and issues of helping these customers, these users, of managing their own water consumption. And for that, they said, okay, we have to provide these customers with more information about their consumptions in real time, and helping them to reduce their water consumption, so at the end to reduce the bill at the end of the month. And so they engage really with the users, discussing with them, and deploying these new sensors, which are connected through Sigfox technology, connected to the platform. And on top of the platform, they are providing new applications for these users, for the citizen, to really, on a day-to-day basis, being able to follow what are they consuming and reduce the bill. And this is coupled with more innovations. University of Exeter is not that far away, and they are working also closely to use digital twin of the distribution network they have there in Whittington, and being able to provide some more predictive algorithms, or deploy some predictive algorithm on top of this Fire for Water architecture using EPANET-driven digital twins. So it's quite complete use case. And this user engagement demo, which was taking place there, was really the starting point of the local community which are being built by the project. Quickly, technically, because I was asked not to do technical things in the presentation, but still, how is this working? So this is the global FireWare for water architecture that we define. It's based on the FireWare general architecture, and it's based on modular approach. So each box is a different module, and the idea is really to have this kind of Lego block where you can select which are the parts you are interested by, and we saw different demo sites. Each is a bit different focus, but they are all using the same Lego building blocks. And how this is working is because these different building blocks, these different Lego bricks, use the same interfaces. And these interfaces are defined by a European standard, which is defined at ETSI. I will tell a few words about it. So if I could just quickly explain, on the bottom you have obviously all the sources from sensors, but also from satellites, from weather services, and so on. These connect to the platform through different adapters. We spoke about different heterogeneity in the devices and so on. So each time we have a new device, a new interface, then this adapter can be included in the system. These send information to the central components in any kind of FireWare for water architecture, which is a context broker, and that's where data producer and data consumer are connected. So we have all these data producer on the bottom, which are sending data, and then we have component on the top, which can consume this data. It can be simply dashboards, so we do some real-time monitoring of the operation, but you can also connect new processing engine, which can react on some rules. It can be event-based, or it can go further with some machine learning algorithm, and so on and so on. So you can go really further. And that's the way we deployed, for example, the IPANET model as a digital twin in that platform. And purpose at the end will be to use these KPIs monitoring, because when we do all these metrics which go up and so on, it's how we could connect these to evaluate these SDG indicators. That's still a gap to be filled because the SDGs indicators are really high level. We are really lower level in what we issue into the system, but there are some working activities to map the two. And my last slide, this, as I said, was working because we have these Lego bricks that we are able to connect. And this is using this standard as a basis, so which is named NDSI LD, ugly word, but that's what it's called, provided by ETSI, which is the European Telecom Standard Institute, and which define both the interface to connect things, but also the data models, how we represent the different domains which are being connected. And it's completely domain agnostic at start. That's one of the interests. I was saying, okay, for example, in Amsterdam, it's not only about water, it's also about energy. So you can connect using this domain agnostic model, you can connect different domains. It can be water, but it can be energy. If you want to go further with food or people, then you can connect the model. So this is how was built the whole platform. And obviously, when you go and want to deploy a new model, for example, water, you don't, if it exists, you don't invent a new one. That's not necessarily the need to invent a new one, because then you are not progressing, but rather look at what are the existing domains. For example, there is one which is ontology named SAREF for water, which provides ontologies on water management, so which has a connection to this cross-domain ontology. So I thank you for your time. It was my last slide. And hope we will have some questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Frank. I think this is a really great that we learn about the details action points with the SDG 6, and especially through the demo cases. It shows how we could apply this high level goal to the low-level actions using the IoT technologies, especially that the global objective of SDG is the fair and inclusive and sustainable development. I think this is the great cases. I would like to invite the people to make questions. The chat box is open. I think that we have today the rather shy audience, or they all waiting for the panel discussions. But please think of your questions, and we will have all speakers to have a panel discussions. Thank you again, Frank, and I will invite now. I will now invite Mr. Andreas Englund. He is a business development expert at IVL, Swedish Environmental Research Institute. He has over 25 years of experience of working with the innovation in the field of environmental technologies. And he has been author of the special reports in this environmental technology, and teaches at Mid Sweden University on the same topics. He's from our cluster project of the SCORE Water project, and he's an innovation manager in the SCORE project. He will present about challenges to monitor stormwater with the IoT. Please welcome Andreas, and now floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. It has been so many interesting presentations to listen to, and I hope also I can contribute with some aspects to this topic, how to work with the water sector and SDGs. I hope you see me in presentation mode now, and you can see it fully. Otherwise, you have to shout. As it was said, I'm coming from the SCORE Water project, and the background to the SCORE Water project is that climate change and urbanization have increased cities' challenges for managing wastewater, stormwater, and flooding events. So the big question is, how can cities handle these in a cost-efficient way while addressing the UN development goals? There are several of these UN development goals that are affected by stormwater. It's number 6, clean water and sanitation, but also number 11, sustainable cities and communities. And since the stormwater is affecting the aquatic systems, it also affects sustainability goal 14, life below water. And if you work with IoT and digital solutions, you're also contributing to the SDG number 9, which is innovation and infrastructure. So there are several connections here to the SDGs, but there are also several connections to EU policies and directives, which I will linger a little bit on today to see what is really needed in policy changes to have these systems rolled out in the cities. But you also need to engage cities in sustainable water management, as well as contribute to the growing market for water-related SMEs. So these are the central questions with this SCORE Water project. And SCORE Water ensures the resilience of European cities. Let me see. I wonder why it doesn't move now. Oh, I see. Nope. This is strange. It doesn't. My slide doesn't. Oh, maybe I have to do like this. So now I understood why. So the project partners is from Sweden, Spain, and the Netherlands. And there are both institutes like IVL, but also in Spain, ICRA and ERCAT. And there are companies, several companies like Topol, Swiss Hydro, Escan, and Civity, and so on. But also, and that's very important, we have the utilities, the cities with us. We have Gothenburg utility, Kretslopsvatten, we have Becasa in Spain, and we have in the Netherlands, we have the city of Amersfoort in the projects. And since we have been working very close to the cities, we have been able to identify the needs, and I will come back to them later. But before that, I want to just show you the goals of the SCORE Water project. It's to develop, collect data, and test water smart digital solutions and best practice to strengthen cities' resilience, focusing on wastewater, flooding, and stormwater monitoring and management. And in Amersfoort, the focus is on flood prevention and climate resilience. In Barcelona, it's on resilient sewer systems and sewer sociology, and in Gothenburg, water safe infrastructure projects. But if we go back to the needs of the cities that we have identified after doing deep interviews with the cities, we can see that the cities have a large infrastructure of wastewater systems, which includes both sewage and stormwater, and what's important, combined sewage and stormwater, and they need to both regulate these and oversee these. And one of the main pains of these cities is that maintenance and environmental monitoring of these systems are difficult. Everywhere in Europe, we have stormwater that is, because we have a lot of combined sewage and stormwater systems, they are many times mixed with sewage water when we have floodings, and there are sewage water going out in the water bodies that is not treated in a wastewater treatment plant, and that is common for many cities, especially older cities in the city centers where you have this kind of combined systems. So there is therefore a need of monitoring the system based on sensors for both predictive maintenance, but also for this environmental monitoring of the systems, so you can keep the emissions as low as possible from the water. But these monitoring systems need to be low cost, low maintenance, and easy to expand, since you need to have these large scale benefits of these systems. But it is a tough environment, the wastewater and stormwater systems. So the sensor elements need to be robust and have a multiple year maintenance free lifetime to ensure that the operational costs don't get too high. So I think this is one key also to these systems, why we don't really see them launching, is to get the operational cost down and the maintenance cost down. This means that the sensor elements need to withstand the wastewater environment and have a long operational life length. Also, they need to put into a system where a network of many sensors can produce data that could be analyzed by artificial intelligence to find relevant patterns that assist predictive maintenance in the whole system. So these are the needs that we have seen been articulated by the cities and utilities that we have involved. And I will now give you an example of one technology that we are working with that could fulfill several of these needs. And then I will go over to explain a little bit about what are the obstacles when it comes to policy and scaling of this technology. So I will not go so deep into the technology, I just show it very briefly. One example of this solution that has been developed by IVL is a patented turbidity and water level sensor called the Turbinator. And the reason that turbidity is chosen is because that's quite easy to measure, and it's an indicator of other pollutions. Today, you do a lot of sampling with laboratory sampling on different emissions, but that's I mean, many of these kind of other measurements like metals and so on, you're quite far from being able to do that with IoT sensors. But turbidity pretty close, and water level is also almost very interesting. So this sensor meets the need for a robust and connected sensor of low cost. The Turbinator can be used for early warning of pollutants, contributing to know if you have any pollutants or emissions, or for predictive maintenance of city pipelines network for waste and stormwater. It is based on image processing and edge artificial intelligence to predict turbidity and water level. And you can see as a prototype here on the picture on the left. And here you can see on the picture how an earlier prototype that was not so well designed, but how it's fitted into the wells. So this innovative elements of this sensor is low maintenance cost, as it's mounted in the pipe close to the ground and placed above the water line, reducing the need of cleaning due to fouling. And this is very important when it comes to the low maintenance cost, because as soon as you put something into water, things start to grow on it. So if you can keep the sensor above the water, you really lower maintenance cost. It's also low energy consumption and fully powered by battery, and it's robust and designed for monitoring wastewater in a dark environment. All this together reduce the workload related to maintenance, including cleaning the sensor, as well as power supply preparation and mounting of the sensor. And this is a significant reduction. The benefits is early warning of pollutants in the waste and stormwater system, increased capacity in the waste and stormwater system, which leads to less environmental impact and fewer floods, fewer manual inspections, which saves time, travel, and create fewer traffic disruptions. Longer service life on the pipe network, as measurements such as flushing the system are taken only when needed. So you can have several benefits there. And the leakage detection in the pipe network by monitoring trends of turbidity in nearby sensors to distinguish local changes in the section of the pipes. So by connecting this sensor to IoT system, you will have a better monitoring of the system, and you probably could forecast future problems. So this is the benefits. But while we've been analyzing this and going through with both the utilities and the cities, and we also looked at policy, we have noticed that there are some obstacles that are not really technical. They are more on the policy level. And we have some legislative obstacles that hinders this kind of technology from being adopted. That is one is that online monitoring of pollution from stormwater and combined sewage and stormwater systems are usually not the legal requirements. And since it's not a legal requirements, it could even be that it is in the legislation. It's said that you should do laboratory sampling, and this hinders this kind of new technology when you don't have the requirements. Because then the cities will not do it, and you will have harder time to fulfill the SDGs, since there is not these requirements. So there are little incentives for utilities and other actors to invest in these sensing technologies for water quality monitoring. So it would therefore be very beneficial to set legal requirements on online monitoring of pollution from stormwater and combined sewage and stormwater systems. And we have identified that one interesting area to start with could be environmental monitoring of stormwater from construction sites that affect water. And we can see that in the United States, where they have this legislation, where you have a thorough monitoring of construction sites, and you also have a strong legislation where you even can close the construction site, you have a totally different development of IoT measurement and so on. In US, you can actually stop a building for months if you are surpassing level of emissions from the stormwater or coming from the construction site. And you can't do that in what we know any European countries. So, and they have a much more development of IoT technology and small SMEs working with this high technology in the United States. So we see how a more tougher legislation really can trigger technological development in this field. But it's not only a legislative policy problem, it's also an upscaling problem that we have analyzed. Even if you can see benefits for the utilities, for example, when it comes to predictive maintenance, where you actually could, in the OPEX CAPEX calculation, could see benefits, these systems are still not applied in large scale. And this has to do with the problem of scaling up in the water sector. There are indicators that it's profitable to introduce sensing technology in large scale to monitor wastewater systems for maintenance purposes. And there are market-ready or near market-ready sensing technologies available. However, to make sensing technology cost-efficient, the sensors must be produced in large scale. And the water sector is economically a relatively small sector. And therefore, it's difficult to create a volume market based on this sector alone. So many of the sensors that are designed only for the water sector have problem to get enough volume. Also, this has made even more difficult that the water market is made of numerous utilities of varying sizes, each with unique problems in need of tailor-made solutions. The water sector is characterized by being a sector where you are tailor-made systems for each utility. And the digital solution market in itself with its companies fragmented. Together, these divisions coupled with a risk-averse culture, and I think the risk-averse culture is because you are handling quite large systems, large investments, so you want to avoid risk, and make adopting digital solutions a challenging task for many utilities, and industry-wide standardization is difficult to achieve. So you need some kind of standardization. You need to have less fragmentation to be able to upscale in the water sector. So there is therefore essential to stimulate the creation of a volume market for sensing technologies, since scale up on a fragment market is a major barrier for many of the digital technologies in the water market. There is a need for policy to focus on this, and there are examples of policy that could be used, for example, pre-commercial procurement, where several utilities goes together to demand to put up demand and requirements of technology that are not yet on the market or just coming on the market, and then they together buy this to kind of stimulate to get the first customers. So this is another big issue, the upscaling. So finally, if we should make some conclusion, if changes could be made in legislation and policy, could focus on upscaling of IoT and digital solution, could contribute to fulfill the SDGs in a much better way. And as I said in the beginning, there are several SDGs that are relevant here. Clean water and sanitation, number 6. Number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Number 14, life below water is also relevant, since these are affecting the ecosystems, the pollutions that are coming from stormwater and sewage water that are maybe not treated because it's going through these combined sewage and stormwater systems, and with flooding it could go out untreated and affect the water bodies. And also, if we do this in an innovation way, it's related to SDG number 9, innovation and infrastructure. So these policy changes could really have an effect on SDGs in this case. And I would like to thank you for being listening. And I have time for some questions.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I think this is a really important presentation that stormwater and flooding, that I think that many of the big cities have these problems, and then actually in the human history, human beings have been fought against the flooding problem, and then now in an urban style of living, that even the sewage water is also impact on this flooding and things. I think that this is a quite important, the message that you gave to us, that the policy level of the obstacles that we have, and then really this, I think that we see that this is the declaration of the SDGs, that also each government should focusing on that provide the action points, and then I think this kind of understanding where the real obstacle is existing is very important. Thank you very much. We still have a little bit of time, so that I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions to him at the moment.
Well, maybe I can ask a question. It would be very interesting, since we have an audience which coming from maybe other cities. We have been able to study cities in Spain, Sweden, and Holland. Is the picture that I've given, is this accurate with other countries that you have seen? Is it similar, or have we made any mistakes in our analysis here? Could be interesting to just, if someone have anything to contribute here. Very shy audience.
Yeah, it looks like that. I think that we still have a time in the panel discussion. So I think the people, I hope that the people have a more active discussion in the panel sessions, and so that we have another opportunity. So we'll invite the next presenters. We'll have 2 presenters in the next presentations. The next presentation, we have Dr. Olaf Stein and also Mr. Benedikt Bueb. I would like to know that who I should give the presenter right. Should I give the Dr. Olaf Stein or Mr. Benedikt Bueb?
Maybe if you can just give me, so Benedikt,
okay.
Rights would be great. Thank you.
Okay, that before we listen to the presentation, I will shortly introduce our two excellent presenters. Dr. Olaf Stein is a senior fellow at Ecological Institute in Berlin. He coordinates the Institute water activities. And then his work focuses on the evaluation and enhancement of the European Union's and German water policies, and governance and the sustainable management of the water resources. And the co-presenter, Mr. Benedikt Bueb, is a researcher at the same institute, Ecological Institute, and he coordinates the institute work on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is a perfect, the experts we now have it on our webinars. And his focus is on environmental governance and policy, with the emphasis on the climate adaptation, water, and international development. Is two gentlemen from the Horizon 2020 project, Digital Water City. So I will welcome Dr. Stein and Mr. Bueb. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this nice intro. And yeah, happy to be invited. So thanks a lot for this invitation. I think we're both very happy to be here to this interesting webinar. And I will just quickly share my screen. So I hope you can see it now. And so yeah, we will be presenting a bit on the governance side of things, so to say. So unfortunately, Ulf and I, we could just join now. So I'm sure you already had some very interesting presentations and training sessions this morning. And we will now dig a bit deeper into how we can actually harness the potential of digital solutions for sustainable development. And we will look specifically at examples from urban water management, also based a lot on the project we are currently involved in the Digital Water City project, which is a Horizon Europe project. And I will just start off and set the scene again provide you with an overview of the SDGs, but this time in a bit different manner. And because what I want to highlight here especially are the links between digitalization and sustainability in a broad sense. So this is actually copied from a recent publication by Mondejar et al. So they've been specifically looking at the interlinkages or how digital solutions can contribute to individual SDGs, but not only individual SDGs, but also can contribute to these broader clusters. For example, the food, water, energy nexus, I think that's a concept which probably some of you are already familiar with. So to look at the challenges within each of these sectors in an interrelated way and to enhance synergies while decreasing negative interactions. And they clearly see that digital solutions for each of these sectors can contribute to realizing this ambition of this food, water, energy nexus. And they also highlight the potential of digital solutions for industry and well-being, but also for solving the interrelated climate and biodiversity crises. And then they have also listed these SDGs at the bottom: no poverty, gender equality, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities as some overarching SDGs that relate to all of these different approaches and are kind of affected also when digital solutions are being implemented in each of these different approaches or sectors. And then maybe zooming in a bit more on water especially. So as you all know, the SDG 6 is the one on water, and digitalization has of course a huge potential to contribute to SDG 6, but not only SDG 6, but also other SDGs, because as you know, and I think you already discussed this morning probably, we always have to look at these SDGs in an interconnected way and in a holistic way. And I think, digitalization has a broad range of potential entry points in the water sector. So when it comes to collection, transport, cleaning, use, quality sensing, you already discussed some of these examples this morning. So I won't go into too much detail here, but what I want to highlight is that for all these digital solutions, we need a guiding framework, or we need some guiding principles to make sure that these digital solutions live up to the high expectations we have towards them. So here it is really important to monitor these contributions of digital technologies in a holistic manner. So again, resonating with this ambition also of the Agenda 2030 to really look at these huge problems that we are facing with regards to sustainable development in a holistic manner. And what we've been observing also from our work in the Digital Water City project is that not always all these three dimensions are taken into account adequately or sufficiently. So most of the times when it comes to implementing digital solutions, there is a strong focus on hydrological or environmental indicators and how these specific solutions, for example, sensors, can contribute to improving these indicators. And there's also often a focus on economic indicators like the economic viability of these new solutions. So what are the economic benefits of these? But what is often left out is the societal dimension. So for example, how does certain digital solutions also change the access to water? What is the importance or relevance of questions related to digital literacy, for example? What are data privacy issues? And then there's also the issue of cybersecurity. I think this is a topic it has been more and more on the agenda, given the fact that water utilities are considered as critical infrastructure. So I think this is a topic that has been discussed more widely, but in general, I think these societal indicators, something we observe, are not always considered adequately, and especially also the interlinkages between these three dimensions. And I mean, such a multidimensional assessment, taking into account this three dimension, really requires a lot of capacities, and they are quite challenging. So on the one hand, they require an adequate legislative and regulatory framework. So I think the whole issue of digital water governance, digitalization in the water sector is quite a dynamic and emerging topic. So I think it's really important that the regulatory aspects of it, that they take can really cover all these new developments. And I think there's also some work needed at different levels, from the European level, but also maybe at the national levels. They require monitoring frameworks, taking into account all these different interactions. And this morning we already learned about these, about a possible potential way to assess interactions between different SDGs. So I think this is already a good start to look at how also these digital solutions can contribute to different SDGs, and therewith also how they relate to these three dimensions that I mentioned. Then these assessments also require relevant personnel that also thinks in this holistic way, because I think what we also experience is that oftentimes, especially when it comes also to public administration, it's quite hard also to break down the silos they're operating in. So this really requires to work together across boundaries, across ministries. And this requires, of course, financial capacities also to conduct such assessments. And the thing is also probably clear, it requires, or digital solutions can help here. So if we have digital solutions that can really assess these complex interactions, I think we are already, we need to focus more on how these digital solutions can actually support these assessments. So this all brings me to a very important argument, I think, because governance is key here, as for many other policy fields, but also for this field of digital water governance. This is an emerging field, and we defined it in a previous study, and we said that digital water governance really regulates the management of, or is the social function that regulates the management of water resources and provisions of water services by means of ICT solutions at different levels of society. So it's important to take these different levels of society into account that are involved, to take a look at the different actors, processes, and regulations and structures, and also interlinkages with other sectors. And in this very same publication, we also came up with a governance assessment framework. So we are currently applying this framework in different cities in this Digital Water City project, looking at different aspects of the governance setting at administrative levels, for example, at the actors that are operating at these levels. And we also look at different perceptions of the governance problems, which is relevant, for example, when it comes to the perceived benefits of these new digital solutions. We're looking at strategies and instruments, which refers a lot to the actual regulatory framework, what are policies, what are incentives that are present also at local level that enhance the uptake of digital solutions or also hinder them. And finally, we look into responsibilities and resources. So what actors have a mandate to actually implement or to have a mandate in decision making in digital water governance. We in this report we're also providing an idea on how we can all synthesize this complex information to come up with recommendations on a modification of the governance setting in these case studies. And on one of our last slides, you will also find the name of this publication. Because I think it can be helpful when assessing this quite new and still emerging topic of digital water governance. And this brings me to my next slide before I hand over to my colleague Ulf. So one thing that we are looking at in the Digital Water City project is the whole issue of digital solutions for education and public participation in the water sector. and Ulf will explain a bit more on specific on a specific intervention that we've been supporting in Berlin. Because I think when we talk about the potential of digital solutions in the water sector, we talk a lot about the technical solutions to enhance the efficiency and the sustainability in the utilities. But what is a bit neglected from our point of view is the potential also for public participation and involvement. So, for example, through mobile apps, when, for example, citizens can measure or can find out more about the bathing site quality in their respective city, they can really learn about specific water-related issues, and they can also contribute data on water quality and quantity, and at the same time increasing their awareness and knowledge on these issues. So ideally, this can then even contribute to citizen science. And here we see also a strong link to an SDG target 6B, so a means of implementation of the SDGs, which is exactly about the support and strengthening of the participation of local communities in improving water and sanitation management. So we really see that this can have a large contribution to also achieving this target. And Ulf will explain now a bit more about what we've been doing also in the Digital Water City project in this regard.
Yeah, so also from my side, hello to everyone. This is an overview now of the digital solutions that are being developed under the Digital Water City project. You see that we have a portfolio of in total 15 or 16 digital solutions, and some of them are about smart city applications, preventing, for instance, that toxic elements are entering the water. We have some of the apps are dealing with groundwater related topics, and some of the apps are also on topics like public involvement. And one of the solutions that we are especially interested in is the one that I've highlighted here. It's an app, a mobile app on augmented reality. And it uses these augmented reality technology on mobile devices. Next slide, please. So we were thinking of looking at the whole project and all these 15 tools that we have, which are the strongest links of our solutions to the SDGs, and you see them here. And you already learned this morning from different speakers that you can distinguish between positive impacts on the SDGs and potential risk and negative impacts. So our thinking was looking at our apps is that, yeah, of course, most of the apps help us to provide clean, safe, and accessible water. They, of course, support smart, sustainable cities. They change the way we use and consume water and energy in a more sustainable way. It leads to increased collaboration within and across sectors. And yes, we have hopefully by some of the apps reduce point and diffuse pollution. We're advancing water infrastructure. So these are all the good things, the things that we can count on the positive side. Then there are also some potential risks and negative impacts. For instance, that most of these apps obviously use energy. So especially the point on reducing greenhouse gases is something that is a bit unsure. Also unsure is, and Benedikt already mentioned this, I mean, how strongly really can these apps support citizens to have a bigger share in societal decisions? We also are a bit unsure if these apps, one app is for instance on water reuse in agriculture, can really boost agricultural productivity. So and also in terms of reducing inequalities, we always have to talk about, or we find that not all citizens can use these apps. Of course, elderly people less likely use our apps than young people. So this is what this term digital device covers. Next slide, please. So again, to our apps that I have highlighted before, the Making Groundwater Visible app. It's an AR app that runs on different platforms. You can use it on-site as a tour guide, but you can also use it off-site and display a three-dimensional model of groundwater in Berlin in your room. So you can use it for educational purposes. The target audience is, for instance, pupils, tour guides, but also interested public. Yeah, and it really enables you to visualize the challenges of groundwater management, something that wasn't possible before. And of course, we also see this technology as one of the enablers when it comes to display other environmental problems and issues in Berlin. Next slide, please. Benedikt highlighted that that we have different case studies and in different cities, and one of our case studies is in Berlin. And we learned of our definition of digital water governance. And you see that as it is now, there is still a pretty strong separation between the water policies that you see on the left-hand side and the digital policies that you see on the right side. You can also see that there are different governmental levels, the EU level, national level, and local level. And you see that if you just look at, for example, at the EU level, that there are some policies, for instance, the Water Framework Directive, which is pretty far away from digitalization. You won't find any word on this in the directive. Other directives, for instance, Inspire Directive, are more closely to both realms. So integrated policies are hard to find. We still think a lot in silos. What we also discover, as we have now here, three-layer model, that the policy making on the European level really strongly influences the local management. Yeah, so the Water Framework Directive is really implemented on the ground. So it's very important what it says about digitalization or what it doesn't say about digitalization. We also see that the digital realm isn't that regulated, that much regulated. You see some policy here, but they hardly touch topics related to water management and digitalization. Next slide, please. Yeah, and from this finding, you can also extrapolate what's happening in other European cities. We are not only having Berlin as a case study, we also have other main capitals, namely Milano, we have Copenhagen, we have Berlin, Paris, and Sofia. And what we see is in all those cities that digital governance is still in the early stage. At the same time, there we see a strong lack of digital skills in the water sector. There's, in a way, kind of unwillingness, especially by those working in the water sector, to implement strongly new technical innovations. And this mainly has to do with data protection and security issues. And we also see that there's increasing need for new monitoring and reporting activities. So these were now the challenges on the left-hand side. Of the opportunity side, you see that potentially EU policies could really influence smart water management. We also see in the water sector there's a strong need to implement smart solutions and also for water utilities to become more competitive by using digital solutions. So we still have a wide range of unexplored benefits. Next slide, please. So now what we did actually look very broadly on the digital solutions in the project, but then we thought maybe let's take an example. So we decided to take this groundwater visibility app and score them against the different sustainable development goals. That is something that you already saw from other presenters today, but we did it in a more simple way. And you see there are some, these are the blue columns. You see there are some SDGs where we have positive, where we see a positive impact of the app on these SDGs. For instance, educational effects that we see that there is, of course, this AR technology fosters innovation and also brings the option to strengthen infrastructure. We, of course, also this app contributes to the whole sustainable cities idea. And yeah, it also strengthens to some extent institutions because when it's possible for water utilities, for instance, the Berlin Waterworks, to display what they are doing underground, of course, this is an important contribution to making the educated public familiar with environmental issues. On the negative side, we see some inequalities arising. I already mentioned this digital divide. This is a really a topic that only younger generation knows how to use, for instance, AR technology. Yeah, and also the climate action is something that concerns us a bit. Again, this is not a quantitative assessment. It was just done by expert judgment. We don't have real numbers for that. We would have needed to do some life cycle analysis in order to come to this conclusion, but I think it gives us a tendency. Next slide. Benedikt, yeah, okay. So some takeaway messages, not only from me, but also from Benedikt. So we think that we see that different digital solutions have a distinct potential in terms of benefits and challenges regarding the SDG implementation. And some of the promises from the Sustainable Development Goals, for instance, leave no one behind, social inclusiveness, are really hard to tackle with digital solutions. We also see that there are growing evidence of the benefits that are enabled by digital solutions in the water sector. For instance, we see some potential to reduce the energy demand, improve control of emissions. However, those benefits are often very poorly communicated, and the wider social and environmental impacts are not fully or sufficiently explored yet. And the last point is actually, I think we highlighted how important it is these different digital and water regulations, and that they are also changing at the moment. They have to be adapted in the near future in order to support the digital translation. So we think it's actually a good timing in order to exploit a better fitting of these technology advances and with the SDGs. So thank you. That's all from our side. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Ulf and Benedikt. I think this is really nice to listen. That I think it's also very closely related to the message that what Andreas gave before. I think that this is really the message that the digital solutions surely can contribute to the SDG, but it has two folds. The one is that this, as you said, the generation gaps, and then but the other one also could be the social acceptance, like what you mentioned, social indicators in Benedict's presentation. There is this cybersecurity or data privacy things could be clearly also we need the social acceptance on that side. Yeah, we are all working on that, but also it gives a lot of benefits, and actually the digital solution itself can fill up the gap, I guess. I think that also it was very interesting to listen that from the presentation, the water framework directives that actually doesn't say any digitalization the criteria. So that's exactly matching with what Andreas presented, that it would be certainly benefited if we have more regulation on this in the steps on how we could use the digital solution and so on. I think so. It's naturally link us to make a panel discussions. Not only the audience, I think we have excellent presenters here, and then among the panels also could exchange their opinions, and then we could discuss together. Wait a sec, I just put to remind you, all of you. I will put it to our agenda so that you can see the presenters' name. And you could reminds the things what we discussed so far. So we discussed so far. The first one was the NIODIS Water Observatory. That it shows that the quite nice visualization tools that it would be clearly benefit if we have a visualization tools to show this kind of the water data to the publics, that especially non-technical people and then decision makers could see that what's the impact, and then could clearly use it. I think that was the nice presentation we had and in training sessions. And second one was the IAM for SDG. That was the presentation about the impact assessment, so that the practical steps that how we could assess our steps toward the SDGs, which is not limited to the water sectors, but also to apply to any project in any areas. Then we have 3 presentations. First one was the managing SDG KPIs through standardized data models and platforms, so that we see the nice demo sites, and then how this in the Fed for Fire Waters, that how they apply the IoT solutions to measure the KPIs. So from the high level goals to the low level of technical the measurement. Next one was the challenge to the monitor stormwater with IoT, so that we hear that his insight and then good messages that how this stormwater and flooding can be measured with IoTs, but there is also sort of the limitations, so that we could think it all together. And then the next one was right before we had this harnessing digital solutions for sustainable development goals, that we had examples, and then also the explanation that what they could find it together. So I invite all speakers here, and I think that just would like to have the first questions that we are all in the DW 2020 project, in the boundary of the layer, and then there is a task force on policy, and through this last 2 presentations that from the Andreas and then also Benedict, I think would be great to know if among the partners or the audience and panels, if there are any policy recommendations that like already Andreas gave one, and then if there is any particular specific policy recommendation you could deliver that for the benefit of to make a real actions on the SDG goals. I think that there was originally also, I think that Andreas would like to ask, I think, to the partners. So probably Ulf and Benedikt didn't join it in early, but that they are particularly in the area of the policy making, policy and governance part for the water management, especially in EU and German. So I think that probably two of you are the best person to give a little more insight and then recommendation on this side.
Sure, I can quickly start if you want, and then maybe Ulf can complement. So yeah, when it comes to key gaps in the EU legislation, I think there are several things where I see gaps. So maybe starting first with coming back to the SDGs also, and the legislation regarding the SDGs and how they are embedded at European level. So I think if we talk about the SDGs, it's great to see that now we have the European Green Deal, and the European Green Deal is a major step to basically localize a lot of the SDGs at the EU level, and also stronger harmonize them with the own ambitions within the EU. And if you go through the European Green Deal, you really see that it really resonates with a lot of SDGs, and they're being mentioned throughout all the legislation, or the regulatory framework of the European Green Deal. So, and they both also take this holistic approach. However, I still see that there's a lack when it comes to action, and this might also be because there's a lack of legislation on this when it comes to action on the SDGs at the EU level. So there's been some interesting documents from the Commission, for example, on delivering on the SDGs last year. But I think what is still missing a bit is how this will lead to concrete action, and how this could also be institutionalized. So I think there are some ideas on how we could do this, or how this could be possible at EU level. There have been some discussions on stronger integrating the SDGs, and also the planning for the SDGs, the monitoring of the SDGs in the European semester budgeting process. I don't know if you're aware of this process, but it's basically an EU process to where member states are asked to submit their budget plannings, and also their macroeconomic outlooks, etc. And there have been some discussions whether this could be a potential entry point to stronger integrate the SDGs really at a central level within the EU framework. And yeah, I think generally there might also be a lack of consideration of SDG issues when it comes to the actual work being done throughout the different Commission directorates. So I think there might be some interesting entry points. And then when it comes to this intersection of digitalization and water management, yeah, as we said, this is an emerging topic, and it's quite clear that the legislation is not fully there yet. So we're still having some gaps there. And I think one issue is also the whole question of interoperability of the solutions developed. I think, at least to my knowledge, there is no standard yet, no European standard also to allow for easy interoperability of the solutions developed. And of course, this is challenging because the water sector is quite fragmented. But I think this would be an important step forward. Another would be maybe also to provide a framework at EU level to finalize the creation of a digital single market for water services, which has also been discussed for some time, to really promote the transition of ICT technologies and standards at the European level. So these are just a few ideas from my side. Ulf, you would like to add something?
Yeah, I would also thanks Benedikt, a very valuable points. I think one thing that we really should add is everything related to data rights. So those of you who work in the environmental sector know that data information is actually the gold standard for any activity in terms of regulation, monitoring, or changing policies. So you really need data And what we see very often that actually, because data, owning data is also power. So what we see is that very often environmental data that could have been used to improve anything or making progress regarding the SDGs are not available. So we have the General Data Protection Regulation on the European level. And I would like to see that environmental data is much more easier accessible and usable for the purpose, for any purposes that supports the SDGs. At the moment, that isn't the case. It's very hard to get data on things, not even from public institutions. We see this every day when we do research, and I think we're doing this, we're a think tank doing research on a non-for-profit level. So I think when we do research, we should be able to access environmental data in a better way. And these environmental data could be also an enabler for new digital solutions. That could be, for instance, water quality apps, that could be modeling activities. It could be also information of the general public when you can go swimming or not. So we see the whole topic of data protection and data deregulation actually as the most crucial point that needs to be changed in law. The other thing that I want to highlight is there is, and I hope I could make this clear in my talk, there's a very high incoherence of the different laws on the same levels. On the EU level, you have the Water Framework Directive and the daughter directives related to it. You have, for instance, the nature directives. Sometimes they're doing the same things, but you find it in different directives. Different institutions are responsible for implementing them. And this leads to a situation that there's hardly any integration of environmental policies on the ground. And that is something that should be removed, this barrier. I think the Inspire directive, which relates to open data and also metadata, is a good step in that direction. But I think those integrated approaches needs to be much stronger put in front. But it's also clear why we have these very separated and policy fields, because these are also different DGs on the European level doing different things. So we need more policy integration in order to change management on the ground.
Thank you very much.
If
Yes,
you don't mind, I would like to also
yes,
add to this data point. So our system much relies with in data, particularly in what respects data with regional granularity. So I really would like to to comply with what the speaker, what Ulfstein was saying. It's very hard to access data. It's the data is very scattered. And some of this data is essential for us to have actually a global understanding and being able to link it and integrate it to make it useful. To not to compare the progress of each other, not to enter into competitions, but to actually have a better understanding of how we can do policy making over it and using it to understand certain aspects and actions that we can take over that data. We are very much entering into a data-driven society, but we lack of that data because we have so many obstacles that relate with it. That will be obstacles in other progresses as well. That's it.
Yeah, I think that this is a really important message that even the EU policies that the data sharing is the really key factor to achieve the goal that we would like to make a data innovation for the digital single market in EU. I think that also for sharing the more data is very much related to the interoperabilities that what Benedict mentions, and we have here the experts on the data interoperability. Frank is working on this NGSILD, and then he specialized making a huge effort on achieving this interoperability parts. And maybe on this aspect, maybe Frank, you could join to the discussion and then share your knowledges and then which direction we are going on, and then what's the status, and then how we should achieve this on the further.
Yes. So okay, data interoperability is always a big issue which requires a lot of time to progress, and that's not something which will be solved in a short term. That's something that we would still see on the table. I think as soon as you put two different people in the same room, they won't see the world in the same way. That's the way it goes. So what we have to take this for granted, and we have to allow mechanism to exchange data, even if it's not modeled the same way. That's what we try to do for water. So being open to different views on the way data is represented, and using this NGSILD mechanism to exchange these different data sets. Now, how is this moving forward? It has to be open. It's always a difficulty we are facing is about data sharing. And as soon as we speak about sharing, opening, okay, we see a lot of people a bit frightened on that. So what we have maybe to make clear that we have to share the data model. This doesn't mean that we have to share the data. So still can be private and so on. And to share data model, so maybe it's important to notice that in the project, so not Fiber for Water alone, but in the context of Digital Water 2020, then 5 projects grouped together to progress their definitions of data models and make them publicly available within the smartdatamodel.org initiative. And I think this was quite a noticeable effort from the projects to move together and share the same basis of models. Now there are still some specific models which are being used, but this is not really an issue as long as they can be mapped. So next, for the future, I think that's still the way to go to encourage all stakeholders to share their data models, and think in that context of SDG KPIs, trying to be bottom up from the field, the demo, the models, up to the KPIs, but also top down, as Anna was a bit showing in her presentation, top down, starting from the SDGs down to the metrics, and ensure that we have some common views on that. So I would encourage next project, yes, to go on that effort to share efforts on data modeling activity.
Thank you. I think that it's really important that, of course, all the DW 2020 projects are on the direction that to make more data on sharing, so that including the NIAIDS and Bedford Fire, and I think we are working on it. But still, from the panel, we learned that this is still a lack of the practical data is not so much available, and then. But we see that from the presentation that how nice things you could make if you have available data. I think this is really good to carry on continuously with a bigger collaboration among the project. I think is important. We discussed about these obstacles of the digital solutions, and then I would like to ask Andreas that, but still we know that there is quite a lot of benefits, right? So you had a very practical the devices you even shows that how these IoT solutions could, the benefits to save the labors and times and then all these things. So especially of the wastewater systems, can you explain us a bit more about this? If you know the more cases that how you see the benefits from these IoT solutions on the wastewater system, because now our society goes more and more that that we have a lack of waters, and because of the climate change, we become a lot of places now is the change the degradation, and then I think fresh water is limited, and then handling of the wastewater is a very important issues that what you handle. Can you give us a little bit of the insights that what you observe on that side?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first we have to divide what I was talking about is the wastewater system and the combined system with stormwater and wastewater. And that is essentially today in most cities in Europe, a black hole. You don't have any control of what's in the system. On the other hand, you have the wastewater treatment plant, where you have full control, where you have hundreds or even thousands of sensors. You have models, you have very high level of data handling. So if the wastewater is going through the wastewater treatment plant, then it's really treated and you have full control. But when you have these flooding events, that will be more and more occurring in Europe, and you have these old systems that's usually on the systems in the city center, where you have combined system. In modern parts of the cities, usually you have divided the stormwater from the wastewater, so you have less of a problem. But in the old city centers, then you kind of have this stormwater is kind of over flooding the wastewater system, and then untreated water is going out into the water bodies. And also you have the construction sites where you need to you dig a lot, you can have a lot of pollution coming up. You have explosives, for example, that are used that are producing a lot of nitrogen pollutions. And if you have a bigger site, usually, at least in Sweden, you are obligated to control and you have to treat this, but still you don't have any online monitoring here. You have measurements like once a month you should turn in laboratory measurements and so on of different pollutions, which means that you're a bit late if something happens. If you have a surge or you have something wrong, you can't have these early warning systems. And if it's a smaller building project, you only usually need to turn in an environmental report. You don't even have to measure. So you have all these kind of pollutions that coming in the system that are today not controlled. And I think there's the basic. We need to have the requirements for the municipalities or the utilities to control it. And here is a complicated situation, because when you have it's a shared responsibility. You have the utility who's running the network, you have the building site, the constructor, you have the municipality, you have several organizations, and you have to ask who is responsible for the pollution, who is responsible for finding it. So I think Ulf, I think it was really beneficial when you kind of structured the levels. Is this a European level, the water directive? Is it the national level or even local level? How you implement the policies? Where should you put the demand for IoT or digital solutions? That's not clear. I mean, should that level be on directive level or lower levels? Today there is a reluctance to kind of assign what kind of technology you should use for measurements. Today the environmental legislators want just to see you should fulfill these kind of parameters, and they don't talk about the monitoring. And maybe we can go around this and more have a legislation that says that you should have an real-time control of your system. And if you do that by laboratory measure or if you do it by digital solutions, I mean, that's up to you, but maybe we should have more and more requirements to not just have sampling, to have more of these controls, because today it's really much of a black box, these systems, and we don't have control over what's coming out of these systems. So first of all, we need to have the requirements on what's not going through the wastewater treatment plant, and then we have to discuss how should it be measured, and what legislative level should that requirement be? Should it be on European level, national level, or local level? I think it needs more investigation there. I also think we need to convince environmental legislators that there are real benefits of the digital data. Because what they want to see is not only data, they want to see that this data can lower the pollutions. But we need to prove that by seeing this data, we are lowering the pollutions. It's not only that we are measuring. I discussed that with environmental policymakers. They think, oh, this is nice with digital solutions and so on, but what's the use? What's the use of knowing this? How will that reduce the pollution? So I think we need to actually have some research projects on that to demonstrate that it could be, by knowing, we could lower it. I think that's very essential. I stop there.
I think it's really, really important messages that we have this. So we basically need to, have a requirements there, and also we have a, good methodology to measure this requirement, how we could achieve, and then also the final one that you emphasize in the presentation, that is the legislation. So it should show the benefits and prove we should make it. I think that's also the way that we now have a lot of work to do. So that's why we are working on. I think that when I see this, your comments that we should really, should show some proof that how this could contribute to the lower all these problems and things. I think that it is quite connecting to Joao's the presentation that you showed really the benefits, that I think this kind of visualization that the policymakers could see, and then see that how it could make it easy to take decisions on with the long-term prediction with the data and things. But the important thing is that for the non-technical people, I think it should be easy to use. So what do you think? How hard it could be for new users to configure this in a nice properties in the systems?
So this is in fact one problem that that is found between decision makers and the tools that are produced and are used and are made available. The advances in technology, this obviously in the water sector, in the health sector, in transportation, across different industries. In fact, the data or the machine learning methodologies that can be used and can be powerful applied to data can have results that are difficult to interpret, and so the own analytics of data can be difficult. I'm a PhD in pure mathematics, so I've seen this, and it brings a lot of value if we are able to curate not only the data, but the way that we visualize the data, the way that we can make the data useful by the story and narratives that is presenting in relation with what is being used for. Therefore, the relation between the people that are developing the technology and the people that are using the technology is very, very important, so that the things are made and are presented in a way that they can be integrated in the workflows right away, in the way that the data and the characteristics of the data and the creation of that data, it already is useful before applying the technology to it. And in the end, you would be able to have a better understanding on how to use it before even you started working with it. Usually in mathematics, we say that the bigger percentage of solving a problem is defining well the problem itself. So in the end, here this applies as well. That's why in these particular areas, it's obviously very important that the communication and the the continuous communication with the stakeholders in the water sector, with the local authorities, with the water resource management institutions, it's fluid and clearly the priorities are transparent in both sides, so that the tools that are being generated and that then scale out to all others really solve problems. The problem is well identified and the solution is well identified in its value on how it's going to solve those problems. And that's what we've been really pushing forward with the Water Observatory as well, so that it's not only some solution that is powerful enough on its technical domain, but it can solve the different problems of the different use cases. We were looking into Alicante in Spain, Carouge in Switzerland, Braille in Romania, and other cases that we've been investigating that have different priorities, different things that they want to look at, and using similar tools and similar technologies towards a common goals.
Yeah, I think that the communication is actually really important. And then currently you gave us the 3 examples, these 3 cities in the NIAID's project, and that makes us the questioning that whenever we develop nice technologies through the project, we always should think of the sustainability beyond the project lifetime. And I think this is really nice tools that to introduce the local authorities, and then show that the general public, how we could benefit from the data. And so that I really would like to ask you the question that maybe it's the tricky to answer, but what could be the plans on your side, when this project is ending, and then how you could, continue to promote these nice technologies and to give the benefit for more cities than these 3 cities at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So in fact, the sustainability of technology, particularly technology developed in projects, really lies on the usability of that technology. So the continuation of working on the technology and finding appropriate data, it's very important. Also, the diversification of the problems that we were looking at in the beginning, and for example, like I mentioned in my last slide, how can we apply these achievements that we've been getting onto education for water sustainability, for example, not only for students but for the general public, and also for the users of the water sector, that will be served not with knowledge on and will take a part and will take a role on this transformation that we are going forward all together today, and will be hopefully more hopefully the technology and this regional granularity and this possibility of being closer to the interests of the people, because it's actually talking about the problems around them, will help them in taking the responsibility in this water sustainability. And so the sustainability of the solution itself really lies on its usability and on the scalability to other use cases that we are already investigating. You know, obviously, scalability, like I mentioned, to other SDGs that are related, and how we configure, how easily we actually configure these to the new priorities and new geolocation-based data sources and so on.
Thank you for the answer. I think this is really the way that the reason that we should continue to work and then collaborate further. I would also like to ask Anna that you know, you presented the very practical methodologies that how we could assess our action, you know, to impact on the goal toward the SDGs. And I think this is really important to deliver this methodology to the wide communities, that whenever you work on the project or if you're an organization, this is important to measure that our actions actually have some important impact you know, to achieve the goals. So I would like to know when could be the good time to use this methodology. I think if the only time of project, maybe it's even a little bit hard. So I would like to know that if there is any good moment to apply this and then see where we are and then to update or something, or what could be the way to apply this methodology?
Thank you for asking this question. And definitely the way we elaborated this methodology was obviously in the course of NAIADES. So if you want, we started towards already sometime the middle of the project before we actually got clear results on what actually we are doing, what are the risks, what are the opportunities of the pilots, but also of the project as a whole that we could have maybe have anticipated from the very beginning, from the stage of the proposal. And obviously, for us, it was a bit of work that we could have done before had we had this methodology developed, but that was part of our objectives in the project, so that's why we started a bit later. But however, now that we have this methodology, I do believe that it's essential to use it way before. And I'll explain this with just a few examples that we had from the pilots and also from other partners, is that once we started doing the exercises, we really realized that there were many ideas that we could have had implemented already at proposal stage that wouldn't have costed any additional or very little additional effort, but what could have really had a significant contribution to delivering those goals. And I personally see this sort of methodology as an important step, as we oftentimes have different tables and different justifications to do whenever we're writing a proposal, especially in Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe. We need to justify risks, we need to justify gender balance, for example, or any other topics. The SDG sections remain the small paragraph that we just practically very often copy-paste from other projects, and unfortunately is not well enough attended. So I do believe that implementing this tool from the very beginning, clearly following step by step to really already assess from the beginning what we're doing, who is doing what, and what are the potential risks, could not only help the project and the consortium, but also the evaluators of the project. So even from the European Commission side, to really give more value to those projects who are really committing to the SDGs and obviously therefore to the Green Deal.
Yeah, certainly. I think that this methodology it's really good to have, and then I hope that the more projects actually could use it. You know, what Anna is now working on. But I have another question. Actually, there is this environmental impact assessment, and then this ISO also have all this, you know, standard impact assessment parts and things. So what could be the differences between this IM4 SDG methodologies from the environmental impact assessment we have?
They're very similar by nature. However, environmental impact assessments by title already just focus on the environmental aspect of a project. So we're mostly going to be focusing on emissions, on pollution. However, here we're going to be focused on a very large spectrum of indicators and parameters, so the 17 aspects. So not only environmental, but also social and economic. And it's very important for us to really consider the whole set of the SDGs and really find this out-of-the-box thinking approach in our practices, not just solely focus on environmental issues. So that's obviously one of the key elements for us. And then, of course, we are not only trying to focus on the negative aspects, and environmental impact assessment usually focuses mostly on the negative side. Here, we're trying to open the room also to the opportunities and really say, okay, we might be doing negatively in certain areas, but what can we do better? Where are the points where we can improve, that we can leverage our efforts and better support the SDGs? So in the event that maybe some of the actions are not supporting or just staying at status quo on the risk side, maybe there's something that we can use to balance out as well our activities and our efforts. So in the end, it's really to find the right balance, not necessarily pointing fingers and giving a daunting methodology that is going to put on the spot any specific partner or any specific organizations for the action, but to really just guide from the beginning the user on what they're doing right and what they maybe could improve.
May I add to Anna shortly?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, cool. I was thinking a bit about your former question about where to apply these proofing mechanisms. And I think in research project, of course, you can think of SDGs, but it doesn't really make so much of a difference in terms of investments. For instance, in the water sector, it really could make a change. And so, I mean, I have worked in my past life a lot also with environmental impact studies, and I can hardly remember a single occasion where really things changed afterwards. So because environmental impact studies are more of an information tool than a correcting misleading plans tool. So however, I think that in terms of transparency, these proofing mechanisms are important. And I know that, for instance, large development banks are considering these proofing tools for being implemented for taking investment decisions. And for these kind of so planning processes in the planning phase makes sense to think very strongly on SDGs. But I think the SDGs are also a perfect vehicle to improve policy making. And what we always see, whether you work on governance issues but even in research, that this cross-sectoral collaboration needs to be strengthened. We have seen in the debate of the last decades a lot of tools coming around, like Nexus, now the SDGs, and I already heard the post SDG talks starting. So, however, I mean, the real substantial issues of our society remains that we still work in silos, that we think pretty much in sectors, and that is really something that needs to be improved. And I think also the tool that Anna presented today really makes it very transparent where the issues are. So I still think this needs to be much stronger communicated. Thank you.
Yeah, I really agree with Ulf that I think this is a really important that the good communications, especially not only within the European society, but also probably toward the whole international level, that including the non-technical the areas, and then outside of water sector as well. Just these comments actually reminds me that I would like to ask the Benedict that we so far talk about all about we are from the European project, so that we talk about the SDGs in the broader view, but still we see that this limitation of the framework. There is a no digital rule and stuff from the European scopes. But I would like to ask you the questions that what kind of the role we can can EU play in supporting countries outside of Europe. And then because communication is very important, we said even we have a difficulties to communicate within Europe, and then for the broader stakeholders. But clearly it is very important, these issues should go together internationally. Then as you are the expert on the policy parts, I would like to ask you the question that what can we what kind of good methods we can take, and then what EU can have a role in supporting the countries outside the Europe when it comes to the increasing the digitalization of the water sector.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I guess that's an interesting question also, because we've been limiting the discussion so far to the European context. But as you know, the SDGs are really a global concept. Although it's really important that every country and also the EU or within the EU, we look at how we can advance the different SDGs. But it's also really about helping poor countries outside of the EU and in achieving these goals. So I think in the water sector, there are different entry points. So for example, as in Europe, also in our projects, we're developing these very innovative digital solutions. And I think at one point, it's also worth considering how we can scale them up also beyond Europe. And of course, that's a huge challenge, given that everything we've been talking about, legislation, etc., is totally different. So there are major challenges we're facing. But I think, for example, if we look at Africa, I think there's a huge potential because the population is already using digital technologies in their daily life a lot. And I also know that there are some interesting startups, for example, looking at how they can improve water infrastructure by providing digital solutions. For example, there's a company from Kenya, OneMarket, I think it's called, providing software solutions to utilities all across Africa to reduce the amount of non-revenue water. So I think there's some really interesting ideas, but they oftentimes lack financing. So I think this is more a question on the European development aid. But I think that this could be an interesting focus also of European development aid to really look at, okay, how can we support them with funding? How can we use unconventional tools to enable their businesses that they want to start? Because I think this has a huge potential, especially in countries that are drought prone, for example. There are so many solutions already out there that can tackle these questions related to water scarcity and drought by means of digital solutions. So I think there's a huge potential, and I guess access to funding is a key issue here, which the EU could support.
Thank you. I think this is the important message you said, that there is a lot of digital solutions already out there, but the important thing is how we could apply and then implement in a wider community. I think that this we are reaching to the ending time, but these comments actually lead me to one last question I would like to ask the Frank. That especially I think when we say that digital solutions, a lot of digital solutions out there, and then but there is a really each silos make it in a different way, and to achieve this scalability, to widely use the digital solutions to internationally, especially for poor countries. Do not have a lot of budget for the paying for the big vendor locked solutions. I think this interoperability is really important. And then you explained about the Edge and GSLD based solutions through the Fire for Water. I'd like to know if there is also other solutions you could see that as a complementary part to achieve this goal, or is there any other current activities to outreach, widely outreach in this interoperability section?
Okay, so maybe rapidly, so there are obviously some other solutions, starting with open source solutions. So there are a lot of open source which exist to interconnect things, but they are not based on open standards. So you have to look at solutions which are both open source and based on widely defined standards, not standards defined by one company only. So there I'm thinking, okay, there is these GSLD things. Maybe there is in the world of OGCs, they are defining some specification as well. There we may miss of this open source community, but still it's a known, in OGCs have some known standards specification for water as well. In Fire for Water, we started looking at these bridges between the OGC specification and the HC1. Bridges are still possible. Now, if we look wider on the data exchange at international level, maybe it's important to also mention the data space initiatives, which are flourishing in Europe. You know that the European Commission is pushing for the European data space, and we have this European data space initiative, which aim at connecting different set of data, and they are working on the connectors to allow actors to share data sets in an interoperable way. So maybe that's the next step for data exchanges in the field of water.
Thank you for the information. Yes, that the OGCs, also in the big groups of the on the standardization side. I think especially in IoT, it's important organization. And the data space is certainly this is the European Commission's focusing on this data sharing, and then I think this is also a very good place that we could bring the contributions, I think. Now we are really reaching to the time. I think this is a really excellent presentations and discussions with all these presenters. Yes, I think that all of these 17 SDG goals are important, but the water is really one of our most precious and essential nature resources. It's really also lying in the heart of our daily activities. I think so that gives us the really the responsibility to continue this effort to make a sustainable management of the water system. I think this is a really significant actions we should take. And today we see the action points, how we could really achieve these goals in line with the SDG, the UN SDG goals, and also EU Green Deal goals. I think we see this all the presenters nice insight and knowledges. I think it's really the time that we really working on the real actions, and I hope that all the audience can make a great collaborations and then make it a better future for the water sectors. Thank you very much. If there is any other further comments or questions, I think it's the time to end these webinars. I hope that we meet again soon with the different topics and then make a further discussion. Thank you very much.